Had an interesting off-season, joining Front Row, back with Front Row. You and Landon.
Back in a different car number, so don't get confused.
We get confused in a hallway sometimes, but you got to be looking forward to it. Know a lot about this team, please.
Yeah, good to see all of you guys. Good to be back at Front Row. That goes back to, what your parents teach you and different things when you're growing up. Like, don't ever burn a bridge. Don't ever make people mad when you might be calling them again one day. So this was a good situation that I was able to line myself back with Ford Performance and Front Row Motorsports. They've obviously done a really nice job growing that team on and off the racetrack the last couple of years. And with Chris Buescher's big win last season and their spot in the playoff, it shows that they're continuing to, make investments on and off the racetrack to make that team better. And, they've got a couple of wins under their belts in the last 4 years. And I think that Landon Cassill is going to be a fun teammate, and we can challenge ourselves, push ourselves to work hard to try to beat one another. But I think we'll also be able to help our organization get better. And we've got some really good partners that have re-signed and coming back for another season. And Bob Jenkins continues to invest in the sport of NASCAR. So, yeah, it's a great situation for me and a lot of familiar faces, and very happy to be back with those guys.
A lot of familiar faces out here. Want to chat with you? We'll start down there.
David, you're a car guy. What do teams do to get back that downforce they're losing with the reduction in the rear spoiler?
Yeah, so they're working in the wind tunnel every single day. These teams have shifts at the two wind tunnels here in North Carolina, 24 hours a day, probably 6-7 days a week. A lot of times you hear of a team, their shift is midnight to 7 a.m. And these wind tunnels are just running all day long. You've got all the manufacturers, all the race teams that are in there going through different scenarios. They've even got good simulation from a computer standpoint where they can change measurements and body builds very little, and so they can work through a lot of changes before they even get to the wind tunnel and have a lot more efficient time at the tunnel. So throughout the year, they end up gaining back what is lost at a rule change. So I think that's why NASCAR continues to make some small minor adjustments, because by October, November, we're already back to the downforce and side force numbers that was taken away in January or December of the previous year. But they're just working hard. They're so smart today, and they're working within the rules, within the tolerances, and they're very, very smart to get back. So NASCAR's got a tough job on their hand to keep trimming that downforce number, and I think they've done a good job, but the teams, it's their job to find it back, and they'll find it back, and whoever finds it back the quickest will have a competitive edge for a little while.
Reed Spencer.
Reed Spencer with NASCAR Wire Service. David, you and Landon are both excellent plate racers. How much are you looking forward to and pointing toward the Daytona 500?
Yeah, the Daytona 500 is obviously a big race for our entire industry, but for a team like Front Row Motorsports, it does level the playing field a little bit, and it presents an opportunity for us to find victory lane. We obviously proved that a few years ago at Daytona, and I think that, or at Talladega, and so I think that with Landon and I's experience and our willingness to work together, that's a great thing. Obviously, you have to have some luck, and you have to have a good car. You have to have everything go your way. But we know that going to Daytona, if we do everything right, we can have an opportunity to win, and that's all you can ask for. Anything can happen in those last 10, 15 laps. But if you can just have an opportunity, I know that Doug Yates is going to have a great engine. I know that our race team has prepared a good Ford Fusion to go down there and have some speed, and we just got to make good decisions throughout the speed weeks, and not only on Sunday for the Daytona 500, but it starts on Thursday and Friday and Saturday. We want to take care of our race car, and with the new segments, I think it'll be important to try to keep some track position throughout the day. I don't think you can afford to ride around in the back and take it easy and just count on the last 40 or 50 laps working your way to the front. So I'm optimistic going to Daytona, and it's such a tone setter for the rest of the season that if we can just come out of there with a top 10, top 15 finish, man, it just makes Atlanta and Las Vegas so much easier going to, knowing that you've got a good start to the year.
McFadden.
Dale McFadden with NBC Sports. How would you describe the growth you've seen in Landon Cassill as a driver since he broke into the Cup Series back in 2008? And how will you develop your relationship as teammates and your dynamic together as the season progresses?
Yeah, well, I don't know a tremendous amount of the details about Landon's early career. My first year was 07, so we were only a year apart. But, I was very fortunate to be with Roush Fenway Racing for my first 4 or 5 seasons, and that helped me, grow and mature a lot. But I had a lot of pressure being in a top-tier ride, and so I think, a guy like Landon, he's had some good opportunities over the years, but he hasn't had that consistent team, consistent program behind him. So I think he's found a good home at Front Row, and he's been able to learn a lot. And I've learned as much driving for small teams as I have for the larger ones. You learn different things and you see different things. But Landon's a young guy. He's healthy. He's got a good racing IQ, I call it. He's a short track racer. He's raced a lot. He's worked on his own race cars. So it's fun to have a teammate that is a racer, enjoys it, gets it. He knows the business side of it too. So I think that we'll, we have hit it off, and we've known each other over the years, but we really haven't been good buddies. So I look forward to spending some time with him, getting to know him. And like I said earlier, I think we'll both challenge each other to be better, but also help each other to grow our team and to be more competitive.
Jacob.
Jacob Seelman, Performance Motorsports Network. Actually, talking about Landon, David, he made a comment yesterday about the new format and talking about how the smaller teams that he felt like, depending on the circumstances, some of the tracks where a lot of people are playing strategy and maybe smaller teams get caught in the crossfire. I mean, how do you view the new format and how it may change how you guys have to race over the course of 500 miles?
Yeah, I think being caught in the crossfire, as you described it, is what the fans and what the TV partners want to see, because that's going to create some drama. When you have a car that's a little faster, a little slower, all mixed in, that's when you have action. That's when you have guys getting pushed out of the way or fending a car off or moving around. That's when you have good, hard racing. So I think that a scenario could play out to where a caution comes out 15, 20 laps prior to a stage being finished, but those top 8 or 10 guys, they want to keep their track position, but if we're running 15th, we can come in and take 4 tires and try to be aggressive and get into the points at the end of that stage. So I think you're going to see some scenarios like that, and obviously it will be a learning curve because every racetrack, every tire wear is different at each race, and the segments are going to be different lengths. We've talked a little bit about Daytona just being right around a fuel window, and so you're going to have some guys, if you're out front and you're not you don't have the best fuel mileage, you might have to pit versus a guy who takes a chance and tries to run mid-pack and save some fuel. You might be able to run that complete stage without pitting. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities for strategy, and I think it plays into a smaller team's wheelhouse to be able to capitalize and score some of those points. I think that would be cool.
Got about time for one more for David. There we go.
Zach Tansveri, Frontstretch. It's just an interesting position that you're in, being back with Front Row. You're with Michael Waltrip Racing, some bigger teams. So being back with the team, how much have you learned, since that time, now being back?
Well, I think you learn a lot depending on who you're working with and how much you want to learn, how much you're involved. And obviously the larger teams do have more resources at their fingertips. They have a little more, they're more engineering driven, so they understand how things happen a little better. And yeah, my time at Joe Gibbs Racing and then at MWR, I definitely did learn a lot, and there was a lot of technology that I hadn't seen or been able to use over the last couple of years at Front Row back when I drove for them in 2013 and 14. So I felt like I did learn a lot, but just even manufacturers, they do things a little different. They view things a little different. So you pick up on some of that, and it's good. When you drive for the same team and the same manufacturer for 6 or 8 years, you do kind of fall into that line to where everything's the same, a lot of similarities year in and year out. So it was good to kind of open my eyes and see some of the different things, and I look forward to working with the Front Row guys and trying to continue to help them grow their team.
Well, our time is narrow enough to where we won't be able to go to another question. We just say thanks for joining us. David Ragan.
Thank you guys for coming out, and we'll see everybody in Daytona.
Looking forward to it.